Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So today we'll be going over the changes coming soon to patch 8.16, and there are gonna be some pretty significant changes. There's gonna be a new game mode, and I think this patch may definitely shake up the League of Legends meta. So as usual, if you guys end up enjoying this video, then do not forget to hit that like button, but let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. So starting things off, and probably one of the biggest changes coming to this patch is of course going to be the release of the new game mode called Nexus Blitz. Now as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, this isn't going to be a part of the rotational game mode queue or whatever they call it. In fact, this is going to be similar to how ARAM is just consistently on the League of Legends client. This game mode is actually quite good. Again, it is called Nexus Blitz, and the idea behind this game mode is the fact that now you're going to have 2 junglers and 3 laners. There's going to be 2 actual lanes and of course a jungle camp where if you do double jungle, you'll actually get more experience, which is the way they designed it. Every about 4 or so minutes, you're actually going to be getting these kind of events that happen, very similar to how maybe Heroes of the Storm currently works. Each event is going to be different, from throwing snowballs at each other to killing a teamo, to battle royale type game mode where the zone keeps closing in and the last person to stay there, or the last, I guess, team to remain within that zone that's alive wins it for their team and gets bonuses, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Now this game mode is actually getting a lot of pluses from a lot of players, and the reason for that is because it still actually feels like League of Legends. And that's the most important part, because other game modes that got released before, like for instance Ascension, they don't really feel like League of Legends. But this one definitely does. It adds a bunch of other stuff as well to make the game almost feel like it's a brand new, fresh experience of League of Legends, and I think most of you, if not all of you, will definitely like it. And for veteran League of Legends players, there's a bunch of items that have been removed in the past that are actually added back to this game mode, so that's going to be quite fun as well. For instance, Force of Nature, Deathfire Grasp, and many others. So look forward to this game mode finally coming out in this patch. But now let's actually start talking about the changes happening to the champions themselves, and I want to start off by talking about Yasuo. So as I'm sure some of you are aware, and if you're not, well, there was a buff on the PvE server that buffed Yasuo's AD ratio on his ultimate by 100%, so it went from, I believe, 150 to 250. And as I'm sure you can expect, this definitely created some controversy among the communities as to why Yasuo is getting buffed in the first place and why he's getting buffed by such a big number. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because this change actually got reverted. Yasuo is no longer, as far as I'm aware, getting buffed in this upcoming patch. However, with that being said, Riot did state that they still want to buff Yasuo in a patch relatively soon. So even though his buffs are not coming this patch, don't be surprised when they start hitting the PvE server relatively soon. But a change that is coming in this patch to a champion is going to be a nerf coming over to Aatrox, and it's going to be, first of all, a nerf to his E ability, where the healing from damage done to non-champions is being lowered by over half, and the charges gained when first learning the ability is now at 1 rather than instantly being at 2. And on top of this, the ultimate cooldown has also been increased by 20 seconds at rank 1, 10 seconds rank 2, and back to the same by rank 3. This is actually a pretty decent nerf to Aatrox, because this will affect his lane sustain quite a bit, which was one of the biggest issues with the champion for sure. Another big issue is of course how much damage his Q actually does, which they have not touched this patch. But I mean, one step at a time. We'll see how much this affects Aatrox negatively, and then I'm sure they'll just go from there. But moving along to the first buff of this patch, we actually have one coming over to Amumu, and you'll be seeing a bunch of buffs and changes coming over to tanky champions this patch, which is going to be essentially the new meta, the tank meta. So the changes to Amumu is as follows. It's going to be towards his E ability Tantrum, to where now his ability to actually just reduce damage also scales off of his bonus armor and magic resistance. So like I said in a previous video, it's almost like a tankception, because his passive already reduces physical damage, but it'll further reduce his physical damage based on his actual armor and MR stats. This might even make top lane Amumu potentially a thing. Next up, we also have a nerf coming over to Fizz, because Riot did agree that they did recently simply overbuff the champion. So the nerf to Fizz is as follows. Starting off with his W ability, the bonus magic AP ratio is actually lowered by 10%, and the bonus on-hit damage AP ratio is being lowered by 5%. So not the biggest nerf in the entire world, but it doesn't end there, because as we move on to his ultimate, you'll see here it has been nerfed by 10% across the board, whether it's the low range Shark, the medium, or the full range. Now compared to a few patches ago where they initially reworked Fizz's W, this is actually still a buff to what it was initially. So this one is going to be kind of in between to what it was before and what they actually overbuffed him to. It shouldn't completely gut the champion should still be relatively pretty strong, but of course not as strong. Next, we have a buff coming over to Hecarim, a jungler that, if he's strong, honestly is just one of the best junglers, easily top 3. So Riot has to be very careful as to how they buff this champion. But his Q ability's AD ratio is going up by 10%, and the base damage on his Q ability as you rank it up is also being increased by an extra 20 by rank 5. So this one is going to be somewhat of a light buff, but again, if they overbuff him, Hecarim just becomes way too dominant and way too overpowered. So this is a good start. We'll see how this affects him and if it makes him overpowered or not. Moving along, we have a quick buff coming over to Leona. Now, before actually on the PvE, there were quite a bit of extra changes coming over to Leona, but they seem to have scrapped almost all of them and have just left us with this very small one to her W, where the cooldown has been changed from being 14 at all ranks to now starting at 14, going all the way down to 10 by rank 5. Next up, we also have some changes coming over to Mr. Nautilus himself, and is going to be towards his W. The shielding of this ability has actually changed to now just being overall a little bit higher in base damage by the time you get it to rank 3+, but you'll also notice that the scaling of this ability as you rank it up is also being lowered per rank. So by rank 5, it's now only 13% of your max HP rather than the old one being 17%. On top of this, the duration on this ability has been lowered from 10 seconds to 6 seconds, but the cooldown has been lowered from 18 at all ranks to now being 12 at all ranks. So all in all, this ability just became more of something that is a bit more spammable, and if you use it correctly at the right times, it'll actually be, I think, more effective, except for maybe really late into the game where the extra scaling fall off is actually going to finally hit. All in all, I would say this is probably a buff for Nautilus, but again, in some aspects, it is also a nerf. Next up, we also have a quick buff coming over to Ramus. Like I said, this is going to be the League of Tanks patch, and furthermore in the next patch probably as well. So the buff to Ramus is towards his W ability, where the bonus armor resistance has been increased by an extra 10% at every single rank, and the bonus magic resistance has been increased by 5% at every single rank. So nothing too completely crazy. I mean, Ramus is still known to be that champion that you pick to counter AD type champions, which for me is going to be quite upsetting if I can't pick maybe Zed or Talia in mid lane, because they'll just counter pick with Ramus, and then full AD against Ramus is, let's be honest, extremely hard to win. Then we have a quick buff coming over to Sion towards his W ability, where the permanent maximum HP gain from small enemies has been increased by 1, and the permanent max HP gain from large enemies has been increased by 5. So in other words, the way he'll just ramp up and just overall HP thanks to his W ability is being increased. So if you ever have a Sion and the enemy team, you're gonna want someone that can deal percent damage, maybe like Vayne, maybe like Kai'Sa, maybe even like Malzahar mid, maybe Brand, or just someone that can actually use Liandry's Torment, or even something like Blade of the Rune King. Next up, a quick change coming over to Tahm Kench that is overall a buff. Now, starting off with his Q ability, the slow duration has been lowered from 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds, but the cooldown has actually been lowered by a second. To me, I believe that is actually a worthy trade-off, because overall they'll just get more damage from this ability, so it's pretty good. But as you move on to his W ability, you can see here, the Devour duration has been changed from starting at 4 going up to 6 to now only being at 4 seconds at all ranks, and the enemy champion duration is still halved. So it'll always be 4 seconds in general, but only 2 seconds for champions regardless of the W rank. And on top of this, the cooldown has been increased, you can see, by double at rank 1, but only extra 6 seconds by rank 5. Now those two right there obviously are a flat nerf. However, as we move on, you can see the cost has been lowered by 30, which is not bad, and it has a new effect to where now, if you use it on an enemy, it'll actually trigger half its normal cooldown, so that if you do use it offensively, the cooldown overall in this ability, as you rank it up, is actually going to be overall lower than what it currently is on the live servers. However, if you use it to save an ally, so essentially if you're playing support Tahm Kench and you're just peeling and eating away your AD carry, it'll actually be a hard nerf. So TLDR, a buff to top lane tanky Tahm Kench, but a nerf to support Tahm Kench. Next up, we have a quick nerf coming over to Talia, where the base movement speed has been lowered and her W seismic shove, the cooldown has been increased from 12 at all ranks to now starting at 16 and then going down to 12. On top of this, her ultimate no longer grants a vision, which is actually pretty good. Next up, we also have a nerf coming over to Trundle, because Trundle is essentially known as the counter to tanks, and since Rad is buffing all the tanks, it'll also make Trundle much more of a powerful pick, so they have to nerf him before that happens. The nerf is as follows. Towards his Q ability, the base damage has been lowered, but the AD ratio has been increased, but let's be honest, who the hell builds AD on Trundle? And the bonus AD duration has also been lowered by 3 seconds. Following Trundle, we also have another nerf coming over to Wukong once again. This one is going to be towards his Q ability, where the damage has been lowered and the AD ratio has also been lowered by 10%. I mean, just all around nerfs coming over for Wukong. This guy is not seeing the best of days recently. And the final actual champion changes is going to be towards a Zoe. Now, I'm sure everyone is just overjoyed and just super happy, because let's be honest, who doesn't love seeing some nerfs coming over to Zoe? Her passive's AP ratio and just the flat damage have both been lowered, and her W's AP ratio has been lowered by a total of 15%. So definitely some pretty significant changes coming over to Zoe for sure. I mean, this is going to make the champion definitely weaker. I mean, I don't think she's going to be completely unplayable, but I feel like unless you're an actual Zoe main, there really isn't as much reason to pick her anymore. Now let's get into some other changes coming over to League of Legends, starting off with a buff coming over to Summoner Heal. The cooldown is being lowered by 30 seconds, so now Heal might actually become a summoner people start taking more frequently rather than just taking Barrier instead. And there are also a bunch of changes coming over to runes, more specifically a nerf coming over to most damage runes. So taking a look at Electrocute, you'll see that the base damage, the AP ratio, and the AD ratio have all been lowered. However, the cooldown has been cut in half at the earlier stages and then being decreased by 5% at the later stages. So for all-in champions like maybe even Talon, Rengar, Kha'Zix, this is going to be a nerf. But for champions that can kind of, abuse this more without having to all-in, so maybe some champions like Zed even, maybe even champions like some mages, I believe that this overall might actually be a buff towards the laning phase. Following this, we also have a nerf coming over to Cheap Shot where the damage has just been flat out lowered. Sudden Impact's lethality bonus and magic penetration bonus have both been lowered as well. Then you have Celerity where the numbers across the board have just been essentially almost cut in half. You also have Scorch that had its damage cut in half, but at least the cooldown has been cut in half as well, which again, a little bit better for pokey champions or champions that can abuse this, but not as good for champions that just want to all-in. And then you have Summon Aerie where the damage has been lowered by a little bit, but the shield has been increased by a little bit as well. And last but not least, we also have some new skins coming in, and my goodness are these skins sexy. You have Mecha Aurelion Sol, Mafia Braum, and then Cosmic Ash, Lulu, and Xin Zhao. But that is going to be it for this video, guys. There you have it, a bunch of new changes coming to patch 8.16. We have the new game mode, the Yasuo buffs have been reverted, that had a lot of controversy surrounding it. A bunch of buffs coming over to tanks because the tank meta is definitely right in front of us. Nerfs to damage champions and a bunch of really sexy new skins. But either way, guys, that's it for this video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your friends, subscribe if you haven't, check out my other videos as well. But thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you for the next video. Peace.